Hello and welcome to the SportsPro Podcast. It was Stephen Fry in 2010 who described commentating on darts with the legendary Sid Waddell that made him as happy as a pig in Chardonnay. But you don't have to be a national treasure to enjoy this sport. Over the past 15 years, darts has gone from strength to strength, with the Professional Darts Corporation selling out arenas, landing multi-million pound broadcast deals and cementing its place in the UK's cultural vocabulary and beyond. But what's the secret sauce to all the success, and can the sport get even bigger? We'll also be asking why the PDC World Darts Championship has become a festive institution, what the future holds for the event, and what wider sport can learn from it. Our dart nicknames are also revealed. Steve talks us through the live experience of watching the best leg ever. Shock, horror, there is no quiz this week. And that's the SportsPro Podcast, the show breaking down the stories shaping sport. Here with me again is SportsPro editor Steve McCaskill. Hello, Steve.
Hi, Ed.
On a scale of very, very, very excited to OMG, how excited are you for this episode?
I've been looking forward to this episode for several weeks. I love darts. Probably second only to football in my station there on Christmas. I think it gets overtaken. So very, very much looking forward to this.
Great stuff. And SportsPro head of editorial Sam Carp. Hello, Sam.
Hello, Ed.
Now, not here with us for this episode is Josh Sim. He very candidly said darts isn't really his bag, which caused Steve to shout blasphemy at him. Fortunately, we found someone who we're cautiously optimistic does know a thing or two about it. It's PDC Chief Executive Matt Porter. Welcome to the show, Matt.
Hello, chaps. Hopefully I don't let you down on that front.
As I say, we are cautiously optimistic. Don't want to, but let's not get ahead of ourselves. Before we start, I'm sure you're all desperate to hear your dart nicknames.
I am, to be honest.
I use Sky Sports' darts name generator, so I'll try not to use them for the whole episode, but this is what it spat out. I am Ed the Entertainer Dixon, which for regular listeners of this podcast is a bit of a stretch. Steve, you are Steve Madhouse McCaskill, which
I like that.
Which might be a reference to your parenting skills, possibly.
There's got to be a Madhouse already on tour.
Possibly.
Yeah. Or at some point, there would have been.
Or at some point,
Matt nodding knowingly. Yeah. And Sam, you are Sam Cowboy Carp. I think they missed out on the fisherman there, sure.
Yeah, open goal, that one, sure.
Surely big fish.
Yeah.
Big fish carp.
It's enough big fish on tour.
You're a big fish in a very small studio. And finally, and this is probably my favourite, Matt the Enforcer Porter.
Oh, I quite like that. I like that. It's probably true as well.
So, Mr. Enforcer, it feels like darts is just getting bigger and bigger. The worlds are now upon us again. Is this a golden age for darts, would you say?
I think it has to be, doesn't it? You know, if you look at what darts has become from where it was, as you referenced earlier, 15 or so years ago, then yes, without a shadow of a doubt. You know, if you look back to the 80s when darts first got into people's public consciousness generally, that's probably the first golden age. You know, people of a certain age will remember Eric Bristow, Jockey Wilson and people like that. But then obviously the sport faded away for maybe a decade or so. And we put the building blocks in place, and what we're seeing now is the fruits of that labour, because it's flying on all fronts.
And we're going to talk about the world specifically first. I'm not saying my wife is the fountain of all sports knowledge, but I think it says something about the worlds that she watches it every year and really, really enjoys it, and yet will watch virtually no other sport. So I guess my question is, how, for you, has the tournament evolved, and where do you see it now in the wider sports landscape?
I think it's that combination of entertainment with sport, isn't it, that's really helped make it what it is. The ingredients are all there. You know, it's at the right time of year. It's in a great venue. It's obviously in London, which helps. And it's just pure entertainment from start to finish. There's so many stories emerge, whether it's the top players or unknowns, you know, or people who are trying to refine their form and get back to where they were before. Wherever you look, there's an angle. And it just really appeals to people, because Christmas is a full-on time of year. You know, you've got all the social activities beforehand, you've got family time, you've got time maybe away from work, and people want to have that, you know, they want to have another dimension to their Christmas, and darts just delivers, because it's wall to wall from, you know, middle of December to the start of January. What our challenge is to make sure people know that, like a dog, darts is for life, not just for Christmas. But, you know, nevertheless, we'll take the fact that millions and millions of people enjoy watching it at that time of year.
Yeah, and a sign of its success is what, £1 million the winner's going to take home. I mean, even as recently as 5 years ago, did you ever think you'd hit that?
Do you know what? It was obviously Barry Hearn, who's our president now, former chairman. He's always been very visionary, and he said to me a long time ago, we'll get to £1 million for first prize. And you don't say, oh well, that's wrong, Basil, we'll never get there, kind of thing, you know. But you sort of think, yeah, that's a bit down the line, isn't it? You know. But we got to a point where, you know, we were ready to jump to the next level, and the credibility of the sport, the reputation of the sport, the reach of the sport has elevated it to a global level now, and the players deserve to have that carrot.
What goes into creating such a, I guess, authentic and unique live experience? I mean, Steve, I mentioned it in the intro. You were there for the greatest leg of darts ever, which, I mean, I'm sure you can explain it, but that kind of encapsulate like everything that is so great about the world. So yeah, we'll throw it to Matt, but for the person, what is it as the layman, if you like?
Oh, my son was born 5 months later, and I'm not sure what was a better moment. That my wife does listen to this, so I should be careful there. I mean, it was that moment. I mean, it's like nothing else I've ever experienced, and the TV does not do it justice for just how loud it was in there, and the scenes, and it just, that moment, just everything about darts in, I can't remember how long it was, but maybe a minute or two in that leg. It was almost like the peak of, you know, on hockey development for darts below 50. I know we're talking about off. I'm going to say off the field, even though there's no field. It was just, that experience is like nothing else I've ever had in sport. And I've been very fortunate to go to a lot of things in the sporting world. That is probably the best thing I've ever seen live.
Well, you're a step ahead of me because I missed it. Well, you know, true story.
Did you pull a sickie?
No, I was at Ali Pally, and the build up to the final was really intense, right? And there's so many things to get right, and I was really hungry. And when the final started, I was like starving. It was like, we got the walk-ons on, so I'm going to sneak into the hospitality lounge and have a bit of leftovers. I'm so hungry, I've got to eat something. I went in there and I came out like 5 minutes later or whatever. Did you see it? Did you see it? I was like, no, see what? I couldn't believe it. I missed it.
Oh, you're in good company, to be fair, because I know we're talking about the World Darts Championship, but a couple of years ago I took my dad to the Premier League final at the O2, and he loves the darts. He'd never been before, so I'm going to take you to the final. Obviously, Littler was playing Humphreys, and my dad's like, I know this gone to an ad break, so he goes, I'm going to sneak off to the toilet quickly. And he's still in the toilet, and the leg starts, and you can probably remember which leg I'm thinking of. And Littler hits a 9-darter, and my dad comes back, like, he's making his way through down the road, he's got a couple of beers, and I just turned to him, I've gone, you're never going to guess what you've just missed. And I was like, he was like, what? So he was like, it's not started yet, has it? And I was like, 9-darter. He was like, I haven't. And it was honestly the most disappointing I've ever seen him, I think. But yeah, just if it makes you feel any better.
Oh no, well, there's some crumb of comfort there.
Did he spill any of the beers though?
He almost threw it on my face.
Threw one up in the air.
It's fair to say that Sky have played a massive part in getting the Worlds to where it is now. And I know, Steve, you want to ask a bit more about that relationship with Sky.
Yeah, I think, we talk about where darts was 15 years ago, but you go even further back to when PDC started. I mean, Sky, that commitment was very important. But then in terms of what they've done from a production standpoint, I think has played a massive role in how darts presented. It's made it in view very seriously. It's huge. And of course, you're just with a new contract with Sky. It's a significant financial increase. How did you go about negotiating that new contract? I mean, obviously Sky have been a very long-term partner, but darts has grown, and do you assume you feel like, need to be recognised for that? How did those negotiations go? Were there other parties? What was the process for that?
Yeah, I mean, look, first and foremost, Sky's been this country's premier sports broadcaster for 3 decades or so now, probably longer. And their commitment to the PDC, as you referenced, in the early days was what helped get the organisation off the ground. And for those listening who aren't aware, the early days were the early 90s, which coincided with the launch of Sky in the UK. So it was ideal timing for the PDC and probably for Sky as well when they needed extra content. But point is that the two organisations grew together, and Sky's creativity, their editorial standards, their production values, that they help to elevate the sport and present it to people's living rooms in a way that made it compelling viewing, which was obviously important because essentially the sport is quite repetitive, and is relatively static sport. So if you don't present it in an engaging way, people could get quite bored of it quite soon. But all the enhancements and things like walk-ons and the way that the screens are done and the way that the graphics are presented, and all that, without necessarily knowing it as a viewer, they're enhancing your experience, And I think the fact that has been combined with the excellence of the players has created a product which quite organically has become, so beloved. So when it came round to the rights renewals, obviously the conversations start, a year plus before the current deal ends. You start, one of our core values is loyalty, and you start from a position of, these guys have been with us a long time and they've helped us work with us to build the product to where it is now. But in the same vein, the product is now on a different level and it needs to be treated with that level of respect. And we were quite transparent with Sky about that from day one. We said, look, we want to stay with you guys. You're our first choice, but it's a fragmented market now. There's a lot more players in town, and you need to show us that you value us in the same way we value you. And it was relatively straightforward. They did value us, and there was other interest, and other interest was genuine and was interesting. But ultimately, the combination of the history of the relationship, the value that Sky put on the product, and the prospect of 5 more years of the biggest tournaments, it worked for both parties.
Darts is increasingly global, and with lots of reports linking the global streamers to having some interest in the rights. And look at what's happened. Germany, for example, is a huge market. I grew up Switzerland is growing an interest. Shout out to Stefan Belmont the other night.
He's doing well.
How you wanted to capitalise on this international growth, and if you're looking at someone like I'm a friend name because I know you DAZN or something like that. How do you work to achieve that combination of reach, revenue, relevancy in all those markets, and make sure darts grows while also making sure you're commercially rewarded?
Well, I think that's an important point, that we are still in a growth phase in so many markets, and we have to pick the right partner for us in the right territory. We've been with partners who I won't name in some countries where maybe commercially it's been successful for us, but the growth has been zero. Because if we're not getting the reach, if we're not getting the eyeballs, we're not going to grow the sport. And don't forget, darts is known all around the world. Everybody knows what a dartboard is, and most people have thrown a dart in some way, shape, or form. But that doesn't necessarily mean in their heads they can translate that to the professional game. So if we don't get the professional game in front of people, we can't get their buy-in to the PDC and their understanding that players play in front of thousands of people for millions of pounds. So we've got to balance the two. We need to be commercially successful in that field, but we also need to get eyes on the product. So it's not necessarily a one-size-fits-all model. It's different answers for different questions depending on where we are. So you look at Germany, the Netherlands, Australia, increasingly Eastern Europe, Scandinavia, are more mature markets. We're in a very different place there to where we might be in India or China or even America, where the product is less well known, but darts is still well known. So they're different answers really, depending on where we're looking at.
And of course, it's going to be at the Ali Pali, Alexandra Palace, synonymous with the Worlds. We've been seeing a lot with the Crucible questions over how long that tournament will stay there. It'll stay there. Sam, I know you wanted to ask a little bit about the Ali Pali.
Yeah, we've sort of been speaking of this in the background throughout this conversation, right? And that event experience, I think, at the Ali Pali is incredibly unique, and obviously around Christmas time, we should have done this episode in fancy dress, really, shouldn't we? I think we were missing a trick there. But in terms of, I suppose, the future, there's been a lot of conversations. What kind of stage are those at now? What can we kind of expect?
Yeah, I mean, look, obviously, it's quite well known that this is the last year of the current contract at Alexandra Palace, and the event, the fact that it sells out in an hour, 6 months before it starts, when no one knows who they're going to watch. People are buying tickets from like 75 countries, I think, this year. The demand is phenomenal. And we have to satisfy that demand because we have an obligation to the players to grow the event so we can continue to deliver bigger platforms for them to play on. We have an obligation to the sport to generate revenue that we can reinvest at different levels. And we have an obligation to the fans to make sure as many of them can see the product as possible. So we've always struggled with, different... The 3,100 capacity inside the West Hall for a few years now has been, not enough to satisfy the demand. And we've looked this year, we've added 8 extra sessions on, we've gone up to 128 players. It didn't make any difference. It's still sold out in an hour. We still had as many people trying to buy tickets on our ticketing platform as there were trying to buy tickets for Glastonbury. It's insane how.
Well, Glastonbury there's over millions in there for Glastonbury.
Yeah, but the same number of attempts.
Yeah, same number of attempts. Sorry, it's extraordinary.
So it's a phenomenon, and it's an animal that needs to be fed. So we're looking at our options. I don't think we're a million miles away from knowing what we want. Obviously, time's not on our side, but I would expect us to be in a better position in a month's time than we are now. So it's perhaps a slightly more vague answer than you would have liked, but it is literally our current position.
Yeah, no, it's interesting as well. How many times over do you reckon you could sell?
I mean, that's the golden question, isn't it? Yeah. When you say like this many people tried to buy tickets, and obviously you understand there's bots and there's the bad things that exist in the ticket world these days, but there's still hundreds of thousands of people trying to, maybe millions, I don't know, trying to buy that many tickets. I would say we could sell the same thing out again, give or take.
We'll take a break, but before we do, the SportsPro Media Summit took place in Madrid from the 18th to 19th of November, and this is some of what went down.
Cheers, Ed. I'm Sam Carp, Head of Editorial here at SportsPro, and we're finally here at the SportsPro Media Summit in Madrid. Now, there's a bit of a running joke here at SportsPro that I've never been to this event in my nearly 8.5 years at the company, but it's great to be here. It's one of our biggest and most anticipated events of the year, taking place at McCaskill over the course of 2 days. As you can see behind me, the delegates are filling through the doors as we get ready for a couple of days of informative sessions and content. With hundreds of delegates from across the sports media industry, as always, our event has an extensive range of attendees, from elite clubs, broadcasters, rights holders, service providers and social media platforms, including organisations like DAZN, Tottenham Hotspur, Man City, the NBA, Amazon, TikTok, YouTube and many more. And as you can see behind me, our exhibitors are busy showcasing their wares as well. The experience has been carefully curated with a levelled up agenda filled with world-class speakers, workshops and experiences designed for professionals looking to dig deeper into specific topics and themes such as OTT and streaming, technology and production, YouTube, social media and advertising. Now, the SportsPro Media Awards also take place here in Madrid, honouring and recognising the pioneers who are driving change through innovation, collaboration and creative excellence in the world of sports media. And as you can see, our winners are going to be walking away with a nice shiny trophy to add to their collection. It's an exciting time to be in the world of sports media, and this event is the place to be to learn more about what the key decision makers and influential figures are coming up with. So why don't you join in the fun at our next SportsPro Media Summit? Keep an eye out on our digital platforms and perhaps we'll see you then. Back to you, Ed.
Welcome to part 2 of the SportsPro Podcast. Matt, let's talk a little bit more about the PDC's broader business strategy. I want to talk about how you're reaching younger audiences. Is it too easy to say, Luke Littler's a silver bullet, it's all fine? I guess it's not as simple as that.
No, I mean, look, I think obviously Luke's emergence has enhanced our growth and our development in that space. It's an area we were moving into, but obviously his presence now takes it to a different level. He reaches a very digital first audience who live their lives on algorithms, and that's having spin-off benefits obviously for the rest of the sport. But it's important to look beyond that as well, because the attention span of people of that generation is perhaps not as long as you might want it to be. So we have to keep evolving in that area and making sure that we deliver relevant content, whilst also not forgetting the need to service our legacy audience, who are the people who've got us where we are in the first place today. So it's a balancing act again between some real long form heavyweight stuff and then the real snappy quickly digestible, maybe throwaway content. You've got to service both audiences. So I think by doing that, we're enhancing our appeal to younger people. And one thing I do notice about our events is the growth and the atmosphere and everything like that. It's very organic. It's all driven by the crowd. We're not imposing things on people. And I think that's really important. A lot of sports, in my opinion, almost try and tell people how to behave, what to like, what to do. This is a standing section. This is a singing section. This is ladies' day, whatever. Like, just let it happen. It's like the growth of our female fans has gone from like 10% to 35% over the last decade or so. We haven't done that by specifically encouraging ladies. We've done that by producing a product that they want to watch. The product, you get the product right and people will follow, rather than necessarily imposing things on people and almost forcing them. You're going to come on Tuesday. You're going to like Wednesday. It's too false. People can see through that, So everything that we do is driven by the crowd, and we're fortunate that the event has an atmosphere anyway, so you don't necessarily have to start from the very bottom with it. But we let the crowd dictate what they want to see and what they want to do.
Yeah, and obviously we're talking with the World's coming up, but the PDC, there's the Premier League darts, myriad of other PDC events, which, Steve, I think you watch pretty much all of them, but I know you wanted to hear from Matt about how the PDC is evolving the product, to all year round, essentially.
Yeah, I mean, we're talking about championships before, and
Yeah.
that's obviously going to get all the headlines just when, for many people, it's their window into the sport. But yeah, starts the year, you have Premier League, which is huge on Thursday nights for Sky. There's, we've just come to, major season.
Yeah.
How do you make sure that all these events become tentpole events, that the atmosphere, the live event experience is just as good or as unique as the World Championships? Obviously, they cater to different geographies, different formats. How do you create darts season? You said earlier about it's not just for Christmas. It's full year round. How do you make that happen?
Well, I think one thing that we're very conscious of is that, unlike a football club, for example, we're not expecting people to come and watch us 20 times a year. We know you'll probably only come once, but we'll work hard to try and get you to come twice. We won't necessarily expect you to come much more than that, because it's not realistic because of the geographical spread. So in terms of growing the audience, you are delivering to different people all the time. But people will want, when they come to the arenas, they will want what they've seen on TV, because that's our biggest advert, and that's how we brand, the event. So I don't want to say rinse and repeat, because that sounds lazy, but there is a formula that works. And as I say before, it's driven, but it's organic. It's not, we don't turn up and impose things on people. We turn up and give people what they want, which is what we know, because it's what they've given us at previous events. And luckily, a lot of the countries we go to are culturally quite similar to the UK, whether it's America, Australia, even Germany and the Netherlands, that, it kind of all fits. So we don't have to make huge modifications to the events or anything like that to make them work locally.
How do you pick to have Chase the Sun or Chelsea Dagger as the break?
Chase the Sun was just picked by Sky years ago, and then when ITV started doing their events, they said, well, we want a sort of equivalent piece, and that was what they came up with. But they just catch on, don't they? I mean, they're quite catchy. There's been, I think, Ring of Fire was used for a bit, and there's been other ones, So yeah, it's just, again, what the crowd wants. If we played Chase the Sun and no one stood up and danced, we wouldn't play Chase the Sun again.
Are you partial to going bunting mental?
I think the point that Steve was making about like the season of darts, that was quite a pertinent one, because I was saying before we came on that it feels like darts is on the telly a lot more now, and it's kind of, every time I go.
The first half of the year is dominated by the Premier League. That 17-week schedule, which is quite brutal. But if you look at it from a logistical perspective, that kind of prevents us having many other events at that time of year, because the Thursday nights are taken up by the Premier League. So we sort of shoehorn the UK Open in. But then when you get into the summer and there's a lot of World Series events in the match play, that leaves us with the back end of the year to have these either long weekends or week-long events. And the calendar is now, where it's evolved over the last 3 decades, it's now quite well established that events are in certain slots, or generally in certain cities. Ideally, I think I'd like to have a little bit less in the second half of the year and a little bit more in the first half of the year. But the only way we could do that would be to put a break into the Premier League, which I'm not sure would be the right thing.
And is that, in terms of how those events are, the cadence of those events, is that dictated? Because obviously you have a very, very close relationship with Sky.
Yeah.
They'll have gaps in their schedule, and
absolutely.
Or is it venue availability, or is that?
No, yeah. I mean, look, venue availability generally we can achieve that by just being well planned in advance. But yeah, I mean, if you look beneath the surface, you'll see that a lot of our week-long Sky events don't clash with too much football. There's an obvious reason for that. Yeah. It works,
Yeah, international breaks especially.
International breaks, yeah.
I think you mentioned before about how a lot of some of the international markets you go to are quite similar to the UK from a cultural perspective. I guess one that isn't is where you're taking a new event next year. Obviously, announced fairly recently that Saudi Arabia will be hosting as part of their Riyadh season and the World Series of Darts. There's obviously kind of like a pre-existing relationship there a little bit with Matchroom and GEA. But why did now kind of feel like the right time to? Yeah,
I mean, look, to be honest, it was driven by the Saudis. They obviously have had our boxing and snooker events there for a couple of years, and that they like the content, they like the profile that they get. They see them as being elite events. And so it was a natural progression for them to want a darts event. I think it'll be a little bit different, but that's not a problem. It just shows that we can cater for a different audience. There's a lot of expats in Saudi. And I've had messages from a few I know work out there saying they're looking forward to coming with their friends and stuff like that. So, it'll look and feel the same as every other event. And, we'll hopefully do a good job for the Saudis in terms of getting their messaging out there about Riyadh season, which is obviously now a global phenomenon.
Yeah, it's the way you kind of have to market that event slightly different as well, I suppose, because, we've been talking a lot about Christmas and people come along to the World Darts Championship because it's, Christmas party season and people are there drinking. Obviously, that's not the same in Saudi Arabia. So I guess kind of how you build excitement around that event. And
I think for people in terms of buying tickets, then it's going to be the excitement of having the best dart players in the world on your doorstep, which is the same as it is when we go to New Zealand or Poland or wherever that we only go once a year. And then for the TV audience, then it's effectively it's irrelevant where the event is, isn't it? If you're watching on TV, it's just how the product looks.
Yeah. And I guess also could we potentially see this being like the start of a deeper relationship with Saudi Arabia further down the line? I don't know if there's...
Yeah, I mean, look, I think I think that's probably a question that's above my pay grade, so I don't really know. But obviously,
sorry, Barry's about to come.
He'll know. Yeah, but look, obviously, there's a strong relationship between Matchroom and not just Riyadh Season, but other sports entities in Saudi Arabia. So our role is predominantly for first and foremost to our sports to keep delivering high quality events for them. If that works in Saudi Arabia, then great.
Are there any other countries that you'd like to take a major event to? Obviously, you've expanded some Premier League and there's other European Tour events, but is there one that you'd really like to increase?
I think when you talk about the biggest events, I think you build the IP of the event by having it synonymous with like at Ali Pali, it's in London at Christmas. People know it's the same as Wimbledon. In London in the summer, it's synonymous with that slot and that profile. So I think rather than just saying, we'll just pick up the World Grand Prix and take it to Hong Kong or something like that, I'm not sure that works. For us, it's about saying if we've identified a market that we think we can go into and make an impact, and there's plenty of markets around the world where they're crying out for professional darts. You look at Canada, you look at Hong Kong. We've done more in Eastern Europe in the last few years. Singapore's another one. South Africa, these places are strong darts markets from a grassroots perspective. So is the time right to take professional events there? Ideally, yes. The limit we have is our calendar. Only having 52 weeks in a year is a real challenge. We're not sure we can do much about that, but it's a problem. So yeah, we identify markets and we try and find the right stakeholders, the right broadcasters, the right venues, the right local partner if necessary. And take the players there. But I think that route, which is generally through the World Series, or if it's in Europe, the European Tour, that route is a more effective route for us than necessarily just moving an already established major event there.
Paddy Power are the title sponsors of the Worlds. Obviously, there are a lot of betting brands involved. It's a BetMGM with the Premier League of Darts. Sam, I know you wanted to ask something about sponsorship.
Yeah, I mean, because we've been talking a lot about kind of the way the audience for darts are diversifying and going into new markets. I think we've seen with Luke Listler specifically, he's bringing new brands into the sport through some of the deals that he's doing. And I know that you guys did one with Uber Eats at the end of last year. I guess how are you trying to tap into the fact that I guess that audience that you can help brands target is now broadening, I suppose?
Yeah, I mean, look, we've got a wide range of partners. We've got a hotel partner, a tyre partner, a financial services partner. There's half a dozen or so who you will see on the set when you watch our events, and we've got a limited amount of inventory for that. So now our commercial team are being creative and putting together packages that are either digital or activation only or whatever, just different ways away from the standard traditional branding model. But again, you have to look at it commercially. The product works for betting companies, and betting companies are queuing up for it. So we have to service the event first and foremost, and whilst we are diversifying our sponsorship portfolio, we're always very conscious of our core audience and our roots and everything like that. And we know that the industry works with us, and we've got some fantastic partners. You look at the way Paddy Power amplify the World Championship, as you say, BetMGM, Betfred, Ball Sports, Ladbrokes. We've got well-established companies from that industry who all bring something to the table, and we wouldn't work with them if they didn't. So I think it's an ongoing evolution, but we're certainly not one of those sports that are going to come out and say, we don't want to have betting partners anymore. That's just not going to be our model. It would be counterproductive for both us and for them.
This is probably going to be the toughest question you're going to get, Matt. As Matt, the Informed supporter, what would your darts walk-on music be?
I must have been asked that before.
I've been asked that loads of times, yeah.
Does it change?
I don't know.
Do you think what mine would be? Because mine changes.
Usually people tell me what it should be, which is a better.
Steve, what do you think it should be?
Oh, I don't know. I know mine, if that helps.
Well, what is it?
I believe and think we're loved by darkness. 100%.
That'd be good. That's good. Well, we're with you, Steve. What are your predictions for the Worlds? I don't think Matt will have to keep his counsel there.
Sorry.
I think it's a difficult one to call. There's not really been a bolter this year. Sometimes, for example, when Johnny Clayton had a good year a couple of years ago, and everyone was tipping him. I mean, I think Van Veen is the consensus for someone who could make an impact. The thing about Luke Littler is it's completely overshadowed the other young players that were doing well. I think in previous eras we talk about, is it Josh Rock the next big thing in darts? But Van Veen, he's won a major. He's had a very good season. Yeah, he'd be my dark horse for the title.
I think it's quite interesting because Littler and Humphreys between them have dominated the last 2 years. Almost every title has been picked up by one of them, or if they haven't, if not, then they've lost in the final. One of them's lost in the final, and that has left a bit of a void beneath it, where the sort of chasing pack of 3 to 4 players before has now become a chasing pack of about 12 players. Because nobody else is coming through that pack. There's players out there throwing 105, 110 averages, but they can't either do it 5 times in a week or a weekend, or get over the line when they need to.
Most players are averaging that 1.5.
Yeah, I mean the standards are ridiculous, and especially if you look at the short races, you can toss a coin in most games, because they're all capable of delivering. Their A game is all of a level. It's where their B game is that if they fall off it, that often dictates the result. So I think it's fascinating. There's the question about whether Michael van Gerwen can get back to the level that he was at before, and then you look at people like Gerwyn Price, Stephen Bunting, Nathan Aspinall, Rob Cross, Johnny Clayton, etc. Like, can they just make that next step, or will they be overtaken by a Rock, a Van Veen, the younger players that are coming through? So there's so many questions, which again helps that recipe for entertainment.
Yeah, it's actually just an interesting point to pick up on because I think when we last spoke, Matt, it was just after Littler had broken through, and you were sort of saying at the time, there's lots more to come that are going to be like that.
Yeah.
Sort of, are you seeing that sort of?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, look, I think it's very unlikely that someone's going to come through and make a World Championship final at 17 and win a World title at 80, and it wouldn't.
That's an outrageous thing.
Be good for the viewing.
But it wouldn't be fair on other younger players to suggest that. But the amount, and look at Bo Greaves, is another young player and obviously female player, which is great that we really want to promote the idea that female players and male players can play together in darts, which is like a huge selling point for the sport. But there is a conveyor belt coming through at that young age, anything from kind of 11 upwards to hitting 100 averages, hitting 9 darters, you will see the benefits of the current youth structure through the JDC in 5 to 10 years' time when they're matured and established, because it's too much to expect everybody to be able to do it at 17. But you can have a long career in darts.
Well, if any of them do throw a 9 darter, we just hope you're not too far in hospitality. Hope you catch it this time. That'll do us for today, I think. There's no quiz this week because we'll be back for our Christmas special, which will feature an end-of-year deluge of questions to crown an overall winner out of Steve, Sam and Josh. So do join us for that. Annual festive chaos is predictably guaranteed. But for now, thanks very much, Matt. Do come back if you can stomach it.
Be happy to.
Thank you, Steve.
Thanks, Ed.
And thank you, Sam.
Cheers, Ed.
Thanks for tuning in. Hope to have you again. Leave us a nice review. It helps us out a lot. If you want to get in touch, you can email us at editor@sportspromedia.com, and make sure to check out our other podcasts, Stream Time, New Era and Mike's Out. The SportsPro Podcast is produced by Dano Ling. Our executive producer is Manny Gill. This episode was recorded at Spotify Studios in London.